The key drivers in today's energy companies is the workforce transition that's happening as an aging workforce is starting to retire and new workers are coming into the field worker roles. In this session, a Cisco partner called Augmentir tells us how they're helping industrial environments make this transition. Here's Keith Hageton to take you through it.
Yeah, so Keith Hageton, I lead customer strategy here at Augmentir. I really appreciate the opportunity to meet with the wider group here. Really, Augmentir is a connected worker tool, as Roland called out. Connected work is probably not new to some of you. I mean, it has been around for 10 years or so, if not a little bit longer. And a lot of the version 1 technologies came to bear really around like, let's digitize paper-based process and SOPs and work instructions. Let's provide, remote assist for, virtual inspections. But that was kind of where the use cases kind of stopped. And what we're noticing is that the problems being solved for kind of before the pandemic have really shifted. And I think a light has been shown on this workforce variability challenge that a lot of people are experiencing. It's across industry, right? So manufacturing, energy, there's a skilled labor shortage. There is this, as Roland said, a large swath of the employed are going to be retiring soon. So how do we capture that kind of institutional knowledge before it retires or walks off site? How can we provide digital tools to the newer hires that maybe aren't necessarily looking at quote unquote dirty jobs as a career path for them, and how can we attract them into this space? And so we think that what we're doing at Augmentir is quite unique, and we do think we're well positioned to solve, again, like workforce variability around getting new hires onboarded quickly, lessening the cognitive load for them to do their jobs well, and then pushing training into the field in a way that new hires and even folks that are more tenured can benefit from, right? And I'd be remiss if I didn't start with this. This just came out today. So we're very, very excited at this to be the connected worker company of the year, according to Frost and Sullivan. So last year, Gartner recognized us as a cool vendor. And then we're really, really excited at this announcement. I'm a bit biased. We believed this internally for a while, but to have the likes of Frost and Sullivan say it meant a lot. So Roland, I hope you don't mind a quick little plug there.
Oh, absolutely.
But this one kind of speaks, I think, to really what we're trying to solve for. Folks are hard to attract, they're hard to keep, they're hard to retain. And really what we're finding from our customers is that, it kind of spoke to this a moment ago, if you give them digital tools, you allow them to self-serve, you give them training opportunities while they're immersed at the point of work in the moment of need. This isn't meant to replace classroom training or your regular onboarding cohorts that you have, but it is meant to get your operators and your technicians and your personnel on the front line to lean in a bit more, to be engaged, provide them with the tools that they need to know how to get stepped up through a merit-based kind of step-up program. So if I'm a level 1 operator today, what will it take for me to get to level 2? Augmentir is a very clever way to solve for that, right? So here's all the skills that you have today that make you competent in your current assignment or your current role. And then here's what you would need to get to that next level. And now you have a digital means of actually tracking that. You can track the work that's being performed, right? Because if I may just kind of step back for a moment, we do digitize paper-based process today. We do allow frontline personnel to capture data in near real time in the field. So those things are still prevalent in the tool. What makes us a bit different is this idea of being able to take the micro learnings or the training content and marry that with standard digital work. So as I'm progressing through, let's say, a checklist, Roland, if I'm a newer hire and I don't quite know what they mean by a certain caliper or even like a tool or a certain process, give me a 10-second video on what that looks like, right? It seems simple enough when you talk about it, but those things don't exist today if it's on paper, right? I'd have to go find my supervisor. I'd have to get on a radio and call someone. Basically, it's dwell time, and it's taking me away from being productive. So why not provide them support, again, at the point of work, in the moment of need, and maybe that 10-second video allows me to progress through steps and complete the work on my own. And then that gives me a sense of fulfillment. It gets me to lean in and take ownership of my role. And then I'll start to look at what else is available to make me better. And we're seeing direct impacts to the business from that idea, right? And it seems
So
fairly
is this,
novel. But yeah, go ahead.
so
Yeah,
is this kind of like context sensitive help for the field worker?
great
Like
question.
this is like
Yes,
if
yeah,
I'm
it's
yeah,
exactly.
if I'm on a new piece of software, there's no more manuals for this software, right? I mean, all I do is if I click on something or I want to do something, there's usually a help button not that far away,
That's
and
right.
it'll actually tell me what I'm supposed to be doing, right? So this is kind of a similar thing with operators, right?
Exactly right.
Actually, before you go from that previous slide, I have another question here
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I'm going to slow you down a bit. If you're talking about old way of onboarding. How did people used to be onboarded as opposed to what you're visualizing here?
Well, so let me share some anecdotes. It's a great question. So it's largely in a classroom setting. It's largely a three-ring binder. You're handed all this paper, and it's like, all right, well,
Yeah.
here you go, become an expert on this, right? And then it is kind of a mixture of on the job and depending on the role, I mean, or the organization, there may be some established like apprentice type programs in place today that you can work and kind of gradually step up through that. But training tends to be an area that is it's underserved. They're overburdened, and it's sometimes an afterthought. So to say that onboarding is um, going incredibly well at the moment, given current operating, I'd say that's a miss. It's not going well, and I think if people if you're able to get into conversations, folks would be fairly open about it. Like, yeah, our training's not that great, or an anecdote that I hear often. I was down at a manufacturing excellence summit in Fort Worth last week and heard from a lot of customers in that space. And what they had to say was, anecdotally speaking, if I bring in 100 people in a week as new hires, I'll probably see 30, maybe 40 of them stay. I mean,
Wow.
just think about that, right? Like, so if we're going to bring a new cohort on and we're going to bring a new hire class in, I'm only going to get lunch for 60 or 70% of that cohort. I'm not ordering lunch for, right? Because they're
Wow.
not going to come back in the second half of the day. I mean, and that's just the reality that, again, so manufacturers, folks in the energy space, like this is a very common problem that we're experiencing in the market today is people don't really envision themselves doing this line of work. When they get in, they're not being supported or given tools to succeed. It's hard to keep people when you're not going to give them the tools to do their job, well. And there's 4 generations of work in the workforce today. And like Gen Zs, for example, expect digital tools. They just expect it,
Yeah.
right? And let's be candid too, and just quite clear. Folks that are on their way to retire shortly, they probably have Facebook. They most likely know how to do a post and a social media update, right? So it's not like they're not leaning into the technology. It's just not often
Sure.
provided, right? So
Yeah.
we think this is an easy way. It could be a tablet, it could be a phone. We even work with RealWear headsets to provide that kind of heads up, hands-free use. So like we really there's plenty of form factors to deploy. The content already exists in a lot of organizations, as said, in a 3-ring binder. So we're seeing a lot of organizations that bought into connected work in the early days. Um, they're wanting tools that can grow with them, and that was part of that Frost and Sullivan award that we received today. Was that a lot of folks that have tried this, have scar tissue from past projects, just found that those tools couldn't grow as their use cases grow, right? As you get into a tool, you
Yeah.
learn more about how it can impact your business and different use cases than maybe what you initially purchased it for. And you're going to be really disappointed to find out that it can't grow with you as your sophistication and maturity with the tool is growing as well. And that's one of our benefits at Augmentir is that we're still fairly young and we're still adding features fairly regularly to the tool. So we're confident we can grow as folks maturity and adoption and use cases kind of grow and expand as well. So yeah, we're
Okay.
thrilled. Yeah.
Yeah, this is awesome. I'm going to let you get into the solution here in a second and show us some of the cool things. What I do want to mention though, for the broader audience, Bruce said at the beginning that we've got Global Energy Show coming up in Calgary. I'm actually honored to chair a working session on workforce transition using technology. So if this if this subject matter interests you at all, or you have someone in your company that is working through this right now, definitely have them, if they're in the Calgary area, for sure, have them register for the technical conference, and I'd love to have them as part of the working group to work through some of this and really figure out how to leverage as much technology as possible to make these transitions work. Anyways, go ahead into the rest of your stuff here.
Thanks, Roland, and great call out. This is a bit of a primer. It's not exhaustive, but these are the types of questions we hear in the market fairly regularly, and these are the types of things that we're poised to solve with our tool. So again, like, where's my succession planning? Where's my bench? If I've got a short down day, I normally deploy my most skilled, most tenured person to my most critical task. How many years of experience do I have walking out the door? Like, do I have anyone on the bench to backfill for that role? Like, these are things that organizations don't necessarily have a good grasp on. It's being managed in an Excel workbook. And if you have any kind of workforce variability, that becomes really onerous to try to keep up to date in any, form or fashion. And it just, it leaves a lot of organizations wanting. So again, a primer slide, not exhaustive, but should give you an idea of kind of what we're doing in the market. And this does kind of start to speak to the product, Roland. So as mentioned, we can take paper-based process, SOPs and work instructions, and digitize those. So now frontline operators and technicians can digitally execute standard work, again, on a phone or a tablet or on a RealWear headset. So now as I go through inspections or pre-safety startups, or if I have any kind of a shutdown turnaround process, or a permit to work use cases, big in petrochemical and in energy abroad, right? These things can now be done digitally, right? So there's value in being audit ready. There's value in having the most current version of an SOP deployed in the wild. There's benefit in integrating into enterprise systems to create a digital thread. We've talked about marrying skills and work, and Roland, you called it out, which I appreciate. One of Augmentir's unique differentiators is that work instructions need to be tailored to the audience that they're trying to serve. And most of the version 1 tools in connected work, really just a work instruction is what it is. Everyone gets the same instructions. So we found that actually affected adoption quite dramatically. So if I'm tenured, give me the bare minimum. Don't overfeed me, but give me what I need to do my job well, right? But if I'm a newer hire, give me everything I need and then some, and give me those helpers and give me these micro contents, right? Like, so our AI can actually suggest different branches or different work instructions based on tenure or based on the number of jobs you've executed without quality defect, right? So the AI is looking at kind of 3 things today, and we're hoping to have it increase in maturity over time, but really it's a continuous improvement engine, Roland, if you think of it that way. It'll look at your procedures, it'll look at your trainings, and it'll look at your workforce and start to help you understand who's trending up and to the right, and then what procedures or training programs might need some effort. Because if it's paper-based and you don't have access to the data, how are you supposed to know, I think, where to spend your time to improve the business? It's hard. It's almost impossible. So the AI is kind of always trying to unearth these opportunities for you to get better at the business, right? And the more you use the tool, the better it gets. So that's a big, big differentiator for us. And then this slide, I think, really speaks to how we're trying to attack it. It's that AI foundational layer on the bottom. That's what we started with. And then we've got these kind of 4 pillars in the middle. We do the expert on demand application today. So if you wanted to use Cisco WebEx for this industrial collaboration, you can surely do it. We have a native tool as well, but whatever your flavor is, right? So you could launch a WebEx expert on demand call in the Augmentir app. So if I'm going through something and I'm stuck, I need help, I could instantly call and ask for help, phone a friend, and then they can see what I see and actually remotely troubleshoot with me. And then they can take photos and then annotate the pictures of the live screen to say, hey, that's not the right flange. Or, hey, that's actually the orange button. I need you to hit the red button, right? Like, so that's pretty cool and unique as well. And as far as integration with Cisco, we started with WebEx, but we're really excited to share that we've started to work with Industrial Asset Vision. And I think Kevin was part of this summit as well again. And then we're looking at Meraki as well, because doing more with less is really what we're hearing our customers say. And what better way than to leverage a machine health tool to give you better coverage, and then be able to take that data from the sensor reading and know who you have to dispatch to actually complete the job, right? So we're really excited at partnering with Cisco and your technology, with just from connectivity and just allowing for an application like ours to even be possible in the field. That's not missed, right? But then all these integration points that we have, we get pretty excited at the potential and the possibility. And on the top, those are the different departments that we speak to, right? Like we have an IT play for sure, where it makes sense to talk to IT around governance and integration, and do we fit within your network, et cetera. But these departments, these lines of business departments, can have direct business impact from the application as well. I've worked with Cisco long enough to know that this slide's kind of the one I probably should have started with. But again, it helps folks kind of understand where we fit in. And I think architecture is important, right? So from a collaboration standpoint, from an MES standpoint, we're working with a CPG manufacturer today where we're integrated into SAP plant maintenance. And that's a really exciting use case. So I actually have a few use case slides here too, Roland, that I was going to dive into. But yeah, I think that this, again, kind of helps folks see where we fit in to the overall enterprise. And we're really trying to be that digital thread. So sustainability, Bruce, you called that out kind of at the top. That's top of mind. Drive paper out of the business, right? Like no more paper SOPs or work instructions. I think we've got an anecdotal story that we helped Colgate-Palmolive save thousands of trees annually by not having to print out work instructions. Because if we're being honest, that's typically what happens, right? Training especially. Okay, here's your work packet. I printed it out. I need you to go through it, and then I got to go get all the signatures from your supervisors and your training lead. I mean, that's what organizations do, right? You're a new hire, you get a big 3-ring binder, and then you have to walk around and have people physically sign off on a piece of paper that says you're competent. We think software could do that a little bit more elegantly, and it's sustainable to boot. So these are the use cases, and this one kind of just starting right out of the gate. This was that SAP plant maintenance integration I just spoke to. Colgate has a few different instances of SAP deployed, and we're integrated in a few different instances, but PM especially. And I want to call out the ROIs on the bottom, that 120-minute reduction from the time a maintenance notification was issued until that maintenance work order gets closed out. 2 hours is a big deal. That's a big deal. And a lot of people across industry can appreciate asset uptime and reducing unplanned downtime, right? So if I can start to validate that my preventative maintenance is actually occurring when it's supposed to, I've got a tool like Augmentir to take as is and as left photos that can be incorporated back into that digital thread, right? If I were to take this example of the plant maintenance integration, it's going to kick off a work order. That work order will then be executed digitally in Augmentir, and then it'll close out via the API back to PM in SAP and close out that work order, complete with all the data that was captured from the operator. Now imagine a tool checklist and a PPE checklist, and then all of the historical data on this asset. So as an operator or a technician, I already know, okay, here's my tools that I need. This is most likely what I'm going to be experiencing out there. Here's like some maybe historical benchmark data that I can look at to see, has this been going on for some time? When was the last CIL performed, right? Just stuff that's not happening today without a tool like ours in place. So ROI like this, I think, is easy to map to. I think this is one of the most drastic impacts we can have on a business is asset uptime and knowing your PMs are happening. Yeah.
So Keith, do you have a hunch as to why it's shorter? Is it people are engaged faster, like the actual workflow is engaged faster, or that the workflow actually takes less time to do?
Yes.
Oh,
So yeah,
okay.
all of that. So basically, there's normally a planner or someone that is like in the middle of the process to dispatch the work.
Okay.
So you got someone that's planning the work, someone that can know, based on the resources I have today, this is the amount of work I can perform. And then it comes down to technical expertise as well. So some tasks might require advanced mechanical expertise. So like my tech 1 can't do it. I need a tech 3.
It gets routed to the right people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Augmentir can actually say, look, based on what we're seeing, based on who's here today, based on the level of expertise needed, you should really we'll show you who's available and who you can dispatch. So we're really trying to your point, Roland, automate that manual dispatch process. And so we think that's big. Also, you'd be surprised, just I forgot a tool, something so simple. But if the truck or the trailer is X number of meters from where I need to go perform my task, that adds up to dwell time. And that could be pretty big, right? We want folks working on the work, wrench time, right? Like we want them doing the work, doing the repair, and we want to minimize the back and forth and the shuffling of paper and steps. And so I think, yes, to both of your points that you called out. And then this next one we think is pretty cool. It's a very similar use case in the sense that we integrate into a system of record. In this case, it happens to be Industrial Asset Vision or Meraki for sake of example. So sensor machine health changes states from healthy to something's wrong, an SMS or an email notification would typically go out. We all know that can be noisy and missed in the field. So what we do is that same use case. Let's create the work order. Let's pull it in digitally into Augmentir. Let's make sure we dispatch the right folks at the right time with the right skill level. This is an example of the actual product itself where I can walk through and take calculations. I can take pictures. I can have historical data, right? Images, rich media. And as I complete that job, it's going to go back into the system of record and close it out. And then the sensor goes back to healthy again, right? So we've completely automated that final mile. And really that's where we're seeing savings because, time is valuable and we want to keep these machines running. Everyone probably has a horror story of how much money gets lost when equipment goes down, and it's not $10, it's hundreds of thousands, if not more, right? So it's really important that we can do this as in near real time as possible. This last one is super specific to energy and petrochemical, but anyone in the space knows that today a permit to work has a lot of safety implications. It has third-party implications. It may involve third-party firms or contractors where we're doing that shutdown turnaround potentially. And that's a very painful process for a lot of our customers. And this use case right here, Roland, we have multiple customers, prospective customers come to us and say, permit to work is our hardest use case. If you can digitize this well, we're confident you can digitize the rest of our SOPs and work instructions. So we've had petrochemical customers come to us and throw us down that gauntlet, and we've done it. So
what makes it so hard?
It's just time. It's time sensitive. It's signatory sensitive. So there's a lot of workflow that has to occur. And typically what happens is, again, you have a work planner and it's all paper based. So they print out this work packet. And now basically you've got multiple people walking around with pieces of paper they have to have, sign offs on. And it could be something like fire department and EMT sign off. It could be a permit for hot work. It could be a confined space. It might be heights. It could be a Div 1 environment where, safety's of the utmost and we don't want you in there for any longer than you have to be in there. So all of these things are typically time bound and they're signature bound and there's that approval workflow. And I can't tell you how many times we heard from a few customers that said the permit's expired. But by the time we got it all executed, I had to go back and start over because I couldn't get it done in time.
So how do you do it?
Well, it's software, right? I mean, we think about it, it's supposed to save you time and money. So we can do these actions or these workflows where basically anything that happens can then trigger, anything can be deemed an event, and then we can trigger automations based on these events. So our founding team, a lot of the application engineers created ThingWorks, which PTC acquired. So that's an IoT platform for industrial, and it has an event architecture. So I think that concept of any detail could be an event, and that event can trigger some kind of an action is what allows us to do multiple approvals in parallel, multiple signatory approvals in parallel. And now we're not shuffling feet. We're actually doing it with software, with governance. And you can sign off. One of the examples down here on lockout, like this is an example of branching where depending on if I click on a certain square, it's going to drive the form to have conditional logic to be dynamic. You can't do that with paper, right? Like it's just, so yeah, again, I mean, just kind of taking what we do based on paper and making it available digitally via software just enables a ton from a workflow and an automation perspective that gains organizations time, visibility, your audit ready at the click of a button, right? I mean, that's the other thing too. Like this benefits operators, but the business will benefit hands down. I mean, getting access to data from the field in near real time, there's a lot that can be said for that, right? New product development, quality issues is an easy one to map to. But you can just like imagine if it's paper-based, they may be a day in arrears before you even review the data. And what if it's critical? Like, I mean, that's not acceptable. So if it's software with Augmentir, you're notified in near real time. And you can set, required fields to where operators can't go forward, or you can create these, again, like I said, kind of like conditional logic, where if I take this capture, fine, I'll let you proceed, but I need additional context. Like, give me a picture and tell me what you found and like, why is it in this state, right? And now you can start to really take that data and do something meaningful with it, right? And again, in paper, it's just, it's impossible to run any kind of a data analytics play if everything's paper-based, right? And that's really Industry 4.0 is standardize and use the data.
That was Keith Hegaton, who provided some compelling options to make the workforce transition a little less painful. You can jump right into the next session of our Virtual Energy Summit by clicking on the next video. Take care.